Thank you for joining us today. Today we've got a fun webinar for you, a little bit different style than maybe you're used to. We're going to have a nice discussion with a couple experts from the field today. So I'm going to get to them in just a moment. Give me a second to set us up a little bit. But what we're here to do is talk about how we can make your organization more of a destination and not a mandate as far as getting back into the office. So we're going to have a nice workplace experience discussion today. So I did mention we have a couple presenters that are going to be speaking with us today. So they are the stars of the call today for sure. And first we have Thomas Philippart. Thomas, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Well, hi everyone. I'm Chief Design Officer at Appspace. I've been there for quite a while. Stop counting, I guess. I spent a lot of my time with customers trying to understand current and upcoming challenges and making sure that we design our product to address those as much as we can.
Wonderful. And also with us today, we have Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. Dr. Gleb, I'll let you introduce yourself as well.
Happy to. So my expertise is in behavioral science. How do people behave in the future of work as work changes? I've been doing this for, since 1999, so 26 years now. I've book published on hybrid work and remote work called Returning to the Office and Leading Hybrid and Remote Teams. I'm also doing a lot with generative AI. So I have a book coming out with Georgetown University Press called The Psychology of Generative AI Adoption. So we can lean into that if we want to chat a little bit about the intersection between workplace and AI. But my expertise is indeed in looking at how do people make the right decisions around the future of work? Because of course, the past is not the future and the industrial age is not the information age. And people are still not really adapted to thinking about the workplace and how it's modulated by modern remote work technologies and AI technologies.
Yes, I'm sure we will get into AI. I have a feeling that will come up for sure. And thank you very much for going through that and introducing yourselves. My name is David Fleck. I am the Senior Director of Product Marketing and Partner Marketing here at Appspace. I will serve as our moderator today, but again, Thomas and Dr. Gleb, thanks again for joining us. So I just wanted to start before we jump into the conversation. I've got some questions here for both of you. I just want to start with a reality check and kind of look at some of the research. Appspace does a workplace trends and experience report every year, and we like to compare those year over year to try and see what's happening. What are the trends? What are people saying in the workplace experience these days? So just a couple highlights I want to bring up to kind of set the stage before we get into our discussion. I want to look at that experience versus productivity. So one of the things that we see is that 85% of employees say that their organization could do more to improve their employee experience. That other 15%, I envy that they feel everything's done perfectly at their organization. But I think that's a telling stat. There is work to be done by our organizations, by us as leaders, to make sure that we are providing the right experience for our employees. The other side of that, 48% said that switching between remote and in-office actually is disrupting their flow. And by that, they mean disrupting their flow, disrupting their productivity. So that's almost half of the people that responded that said that transition is making it harder to do their job, and with something that we need to address for sure. And then if we talk about the different types of work environments and how we support the different ways that we work, and Dr. Gleb, you kind of mentioned a little bit that at the front here in your introduction, but 45% of employees that we surveyed said that they actually feel less productive when working in the office. So again, what are we doing? What's going on there? I think that's a key insight to understand. You would think maybe being in an office, we just naturally think is where all the productivity happens because that's what we've been used to. But there's been changes, and now that's not what we're seeing. That's not always the most productive place to be. The last one here is that only 30% of said that their organization does a good job of supporting their frontline workers. So there's quite a bit of, I think 80% of all employees and workers in the US are frontline workers, and to address as organizations as leaders for workplace experience, are we doing what we need to be doing to support their experience as well? Well, only 30% said that we are. So that was just a couple of our, I think, key insights and findings just to set the stage of where we are. And what I brought up here is just an example of where we might be going into in the future. And as a couple of key points, I think we're going to dive much deeper into a lot of these. But some of the things we're talking about, like you said, Dr. Gleb, at the beginning, is AI-driven workplace. That seamless digital to physical blend and transition, which we saw in the research there. How do we be more predictive, and how do we use our space correctly? How do we get personalized? Not everything is important to everybody all the time, so we need to be a little bit thoughtful about our audiences and personalizing that in our communications. How do we build trust, and how do we make sure that we're thinking about the infrastructure for our employee experience? So just a couple things to set the stage on what I think we should get into today. Okay, so with that, I'm going to start our question and answer portion. And Dr. Gleb, I'd like to start with you, if that's all right. So one of the things I know you've written extensively about is how employee expectations have changed since the pandemic. So I'd love to kind of start there and just kind of understand, what are you seeing now that maybe most leaders are missing?
I think the biggest change that we've seen is people are prioritizing well-being much more than they used to. There's a ton of recent surveys showing that well-being is actually more important than salary for people who are currently working at your companies. Any company, that on average, they prioritize well-being higher than salaries. And we have actual data from work time spending. So how much time are people spending at work to show that? So specifically looking at male educated workers, college educated workers who are earning quite a bit of money, they are spending less time at work than they used to prior to the pandemic. And they're spending more time at leisure. So it's not only surveys that they're saying that, but also their actual actions are showing that they're choosing to earn less money and spend more time prioritizing their well-being. And so the pandemic caused people to, value their health and their well-being, mental health, physical health more. That's one. And second, it showed them that they can do their work remotely. And if they can do their work remotely, why should they spend an hour going to work and an hour going back and fighting through traffic? That, when we have extensive surveys showing that's the least favorite part of people's days. It's very straining. It's very challenging. That's the biggest reason that people have for not wanting to come to the office, fighting for the traffic, the emotional labor, the time, and the expense, of course. There was a recent survey showing that, I think this was from remote, showing that going to the office costs about $56 per day compared to something like about $18 per day for the expenses for someone working remotely. So it's also an expense there. That's like a $30-ish savings, and the time, that challenge. So that is a lot of reasons that people are really rethinking their approach and their prioritization in work and life.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to see that the responses in the surveys are playing out in actual life. Thomas, anything you'd like to add to that?
No, it's super interesting to hear what you just described. I was in New York 2 weeks ago, and I visited 3 big Appspace customers from 3 totally different industries, and the offices were packed. Those organizations went into 4 days a week, minimum in the office. So it was interesting to see that although people may be prioritizing their well-being and trying to avoid the commute, their employers are forcing them into the office, and they're actually back in the office. What I thought was also impressive is those 3 companies went through a massive transformation of their workplace environment. I mean, compared to pre-pandemic, the offices were amazing, extremely focused on collaborative spaces, amazing amenities, you know, restaurant services. One thing you were talking about expenses, they have sponsorized restaurant services, all three of them. So it's cheaper than buying in a shop or in the restaurant. So I guess leaders are trying to address some of the challenges you explained and trying to make it work still in the office. But I mean, again, it's great to see what you're hearing and to also see how companies are dealing with it at different scale.
Yeah, when companies are actually asking their employees to come to the office, and I've worked with a number that have announced return to office, and we've worked with them, one of the things I always emphasize is the real importance of addressing the financial burdens of them coming to the office. So you talked about restaurants, and one of the basic things we do is feeding people, because nobody likes going out and like having to buy a $15, $20 downtown lunch. That's a big expense, so that's not fun. Then of course the commuting costs. So defraying people's commuting costs, giving them a budget for covering their transportation, whether it's the car mileage expenses at the IRS per diem rate and parking, or commuter passes if they're commuting on public transportation. Then for parents, covering childcare, that's definitely highly important. So thinking about that, giving them a clothing expense, because they need, of course, to spend more money on clothing. So if companies are announcing return to office, that is a way to address some of the challenges that they'll experience. But there's no question that if you're announcing a return to office, you're going to lose valuable workers. So there is extensive research showing that retention suffers. People leave when return to office is announced, and companies lose talented staff. And the thing is, the people they lose are the people they can least afford to lose. So the people they lose are the people who are most capable of getting a job elsewhere. And so it's kind of, there's a phenomenon called evaporative cooling, where the people who are left are the people who are least able to find a job elsewhere. And that's not great. That those are the people who are not going to be as talented. And so you're getting companies that are offering flexibility are getting more and more talented people. And so in the long run, that's where you're seeing talent flowing. And you have plenty of statements from companies ranging from Atlassian to Dropbox to NVIDIA that allow flexibility, that say that, hey, we've been overwhelmed and greatly pleased by the quality of talent we're getting from companies like Amazon that are bleeding workers who are going to these companies. And of course, Amazon may not be a great example of successful return to office policy with their recent outage, which, how much of that has been caused by really talented staff leaving. So there's a lot of problems for companies that are announcing return to office, especially if they don't have good strategies for defraying the things that cause a lot of resentment, like the additional expenses that people have to do and have to experience when they're coming to the office.
Yeah, I think those are great points on just the different experiences, the different pain points. And Thomas, a couple of years ago at our user conference, we introduced the Rachel story, that somewhat fictional employee that kind of inspired by some real world experience of an early career professional kind of navigating through hybrid work. And kind of the picture we painted is she was caught in that maze of hybrid schedules and office mandates. She had scattered tools she was using, and I think her story has resonated every time that we've brought it up, because it was a lot of what people were seeing in their day-to-day life. So I'm just curious if we can kind of go in a little bit deeper, but going back to that Rachel story, what are some of the most common pain points you're seeing in the workplace that companies and employees are facing, and how do you think we can address them with maybe infrastructure and communication?
Oh, that's a complex one. I think the biggest challenge is still around communication. And if you look over the last 5 years, the number of changes organizations have gone through in their RTO policies is crazy. And as an employee, do you even know if it's 5 days, 4 days a day? Can I work from home? What can I do from home? What can I not do from home? Who should I be meeting with? So there's a lack of awareness and education for the users. So I think one thing we've noticed is a lot of the big organizations and smaller organizations who've adopted a tool like Appspace to help employees plan their journey into the office. And we're primarily focused on using Appspace to say, hey, you can use Appspace to book a parking place, a desk, a room, a smart locker, know who you're going to be meeting in the office. They've started leveraging the comms side of the product to help enforce or help users understand what's available to them. What are the benefits they're going to get in the office? What events are taking place? What amenities are available to them and services? And what we noticed is organization in the beginning didn't think there was value in that part of the product. They only believed in reservation services type tools. And they're now realizing that reservations tools without communication are pretty much useless or a failure by default. So I think we're seeing a big change there. And the other side to this is you're not bringing back people in the office to have them sit at a desk and do emails. And it's still a lot the case. I did see customers where, yes, the office is loaded, but everyone's sitting at their desk and they're on calls, probably doing Teams meeting with colleagues that are 2 desks down from them or in a meeting room on the upper floor. So organizations are still challenged in getting people to meet in person. And I think the technology is there for that. It's there to say, hey, Dr. Gleb and David and Thomas have a meeting today and they're all going to be in the same building. Let's secure a meeting space for them and let them know that they can meet up in person. This should all be automated. It should not be something the user has to figure out.
I think the automation there is key to helping make things easier and connecting them. Dr. Gleb, anything you want to add as far as kind of specific pain points that you're seeing these days?
I think what Thomas is bringing up about the hybrid meetings is a big challenge, that a lot of people who are coming to the office versus some people who are remote, having a hybrid meeting is not something that companies really know how to do well. And so not having training and not having guidance, unless there's specific, like the way that people interact, the natural human interaction process naturally results in people who are coming in virtually into a hybrid meeting being treated as second-class citizens. And so that is just the natural human dynamic. So in order to work against that, you need to have clear guidelines and processes and systems and structures in place. So for example, if you are having a hybrid meeting, I always tell my clients that you need everyone to have laptops. So there are 2 ways. One is everyone has laptops and everyone talks to their laptops, instead of having people who are in the room talk to each other and then having the people who are virtual just see people having conversations and just like having the side of their face visible, right? Not good. You can't even, like, first of all, you can't hear very well, and second of all, like, you can't even read people's lips. So not a good dynamic. So that's one. The other option is to have good cameras that actually focus on the people who are like OWL cameras and similar cameras that actually focus on the people who are speaking in the room and enable also focus and highlighting of the people who are speaking virtually. So for example, that's just one example out of something that's a reality. There are lots of people who are not going to be in the room, whether it's because they're working from home or they're working from a different location. And so those are dynamics to really think about. That's one. Second of all, getting to another point that Thomas raised, when people are asked to come to the office to have meetings that are not with people in the office, it's just not a very smart use of the office. Like, why are you asking people to come to the office just to meet with people virtually? People can meet virtually from home in a very comfortable environment without spending an hour going there and going back. That's one. Second, if you're in the office, you're going to be distracting the people around you if you're having virtual meetings. Now, there are ways to get around that through having video conference rooms and through having the little like telephone booths. But honestly, changing people's behavior to get them to reserve video conference rooms and go to those booths, like it takes time to reserve the booth, it takes time to go to the conference room. Often people don't want to do that. So a lot of my clients have spent time fighting those battles, trying to get people to change their behaviors to actually go into those video conference booths in video conference rooms and struggling to enforce that those behavior changes. So if you're trying to get people to change their intuitive human behaviors, and that's kind of part of my expertise in behavioral science in the future of work, you're going to have a lot of trouble, and it's going to lead to negative outcomes often. So it's a much better option to give people more flexibility and trust them to do their work in the most effective way, rather than just having a mandated policy that doesn't really make sense with people's actual workflows.
Yeah, I think that's, I'd love to dig in a little bit on that, the behavioral sciences perspective that you brought up there. So from as far as behavioral science goes, why do you think so many employees seem more frustrated in the office than they do at home?
Well, when you come to the office and you're doing the same thing that you can do at home, that is incredibly frustrating. So again, you've just fought through an hour of traffic, right? And you're coming to the office, and then you're having a video conference meeting. Why do that? And then you need to fight for an hour of traffic going on the way home. Why do that? There's no need to do that. You're coming to the office and you're spending your time, like most office workers spend something like 2 to 3 hours a day on virtual communication and on asynchronous virtual communication on email, Slack, Microsoft Teams. Why spend your time that way? That is a very, very bad use of time in the office. If you're coming to the office and you're working on spreadsheets, again, you can be doing that from home. The use case that Thomas talked about in terms of like having an in-person meeting, that is actually a really good use case for the office, because of course, in-person meetings are going to be more effective than virtual meetings, because you can communicate more effectively and build relationships more effectively with people in person. So if you're having an in-person meeting, that's great. That's a good use case. Having brainstorming sessions, having one-on-one conversations about performance or whatever you want to do. The point of coming to the office is collaboration. But how much of your work is actually collaborative? For the large majority of people, when you look at the percentage of their work that's actually collaborative, it's something like maybe 20%, maybe 10%, depending on the job. Now, there are some other additional reasons. So when I work with clients, we think about like various groups. When do various groups need to come to the office? So salespeople, for example, if you're doing outbound calls, there's definitely a benefit of hearing other salespeople do outbound calls, because you're learning from them, you're also being motivated by them. It's dispiriting to do outbound calls often and having a large percentage of rejections, which always come with outbound calls. And so having that motivation is helpful, learning from other people is helpful. So there are certain groups that do benefit from other activities in the office besides meetings, but that's not the large majority of your workers. So thinking about what is the point of people coming to the office? What is the goal? What do you want to accomplish? Just saying magically culture or magically mentoring, that's not going to happen. And what I've seen often, leaders say, we need to come to the office in order for people to mentor each other. Senior leaders often, not necessarily leaders, but senior folks, senior professionals often feel resentful about being asked to come to the office so that they can magically by osmosis mentor young people. And so they often just put on their headphones and they semi-deliberately, resentfully ignore young colleagues because they don't want to have they resent being asked to come to the office just to mentor these youngins. And so that's a negative experience for both senior and junior employees. So you need to really have good reasons, and you have to have good structure for people to come to the office, and not just because I say so and because I have a magic idea of some kind of culture that happens when people are in the office.
Yeah, I think that's what's the office used for and why seems to be the question that we should be asking ourselves a little bit more of these days, and not just, hey, we need to have butts and seats and that's what we're measuring is who's there and how often. It's why are we there and why are we using the office? Thomas, anything you wanted to add to that?
Oh, it's funny. I think people have been investing in their home workplace environment to meet their needs and to be efficient. And the pandemic was the driver there, but then since people have established, and it's not unusual to find someone at home who has a desk that goes up and down, who has a video game chair where they're feeling really comfy, great speaker, microphone. And when they're coming in the office, they have to readjust to an environment that was not tailor-made for them, but for the mass. And I see this. I've been traveling for the last few weeks, and at home I sleep extremely well. I have a bed that I choose with my pillow. I have my setting that is made for me. I know how to turn on the lights in the middle of the night. Everything is easy. When I'm in a hotel, I sleep really bad. It's not the bed is not bad. It's not good. It's just not my bed. It's not my pillow. I don't know where to turn the lights on, and I think it's the same. So I think we've just gone to transition users to build their home workplace environment to be optimal. And then we're telling them now you've got to go into this environment that is built for the masses, and that just doesn't fit perfectly. I see and think about it. I never put AirPods at home, but when I'm going in the office, like Dr. Gleb mentioned, sometimes you have to put your AirPods or you have to find a quiet space so you don't bother your colleagues. That's just this disruption that doesn't exist at home.
I like to switch gears just slightly. We're talking about being in the office, and because we've kind of navigated the return, and a lot of people are back in the office now. And Thomas, one of the things that I've heard out there, the questions being asked is, does that mean space reservation is dead? Is kind of one of the questions I've been hearing. So, if everybody's there, and many organizations are saying everybody's here, or they have a desk or something like that, we don't really need those tools anymore. So, what would you say to that? Is that the case, or where does space management and space reservation, how does that play a role now that those organizations where everybody is back in the office?
I think space reservation has changed for sure. I mean, during the pandemic and right after the pandemic, we needed space reservation because we needed to know where people were sitting. We needed to be able to do contact tracing. But nowadays, we no longer need this. There's no reason to know exactly where you're sitting, David, unless you use it for what we were talking earlier with Dr. Gleb about, which is getting people to be in contact and to meet. So I think space reservation is not about booking a desk. It's about bringing people together with a common center of interest who are maybe working on a project, who are part of the main team. The example of the salespeople is excellent. Then you want those people to be sitting together and not split across the office. One of the customers I visited in New York has more real estate than they have employees in the office. So they have a lot of space. And they want to be able to dynamically adjust which floor is open, which neighborhood is open within a building, so that they don't have empty floor plans with people spread around, which you see a lot in the Silicon Valley, for example. So I think space reservation has just changed its value in bringing people together, making sure you know who's coming in, where they're going to be sitting, do they have meetings, giving access to new types of workspaces that did not exist before, using reservation services to give access to new amenities, being able to book a parking place when you're coming in the city, so you don't have to look for hours or pay a lot of money to a public parking place, booking a smart locker so you know where to store your personal belongings while you're having meetings. All those are reservation services that are new and that help the user journey or help remove some of the frictions.
Yeah, quite the shift, for sure. Dr. Gleb, anything on that topic you'd like to add?
I think space reservation is not something that's dead. There's plenty of companies that are doing hybrid work and that are thinking about how to cut down and manage their workspace. I think space reservation will become more important as we see companies making changes around their leases. And right now, companies are often still on their leases that were there before the pandemic. And so as they shift their leases and they try to accommodate to less people coming into the office because they're on a hybrid schedule, they maybe have their workers coming in 2, 3, 4 days a week, they don't need all the space that they used to have. And so that, I think, will play a larger role as we see the lease space dynamics changing.
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the things that I think a lot of organizations have to do then is kind of manage their employees. Where are they? Where are they following the policies? All of that. So I'd like to talk about the trust aspect of it, Dr. Gleb. If we could start with you on how can leaders build trust without micromanaging their employees?
That's an interesting question that I asked about policies and compliance. So let's start with that in terms of trust. So there's been research from the Flex Index showing that the amount of mandated return to office policy has increased. I think they've shown that it has increased by something like 10% in the last year, but the actual number of people going into the office has increased by something like 2% over the last year. And so there's a big gap between the actual people who are coming into the office and the amount of time that they're supposed to be spending in the office. And that comes through, if you're supposed to spend Monday through Friday, let's say 4 days a week, 9 to 5, then that's a 10% increase. And maybe somebody's coming in, maybe something like for several hours each day. So they might still be technically coming in on all of those days, but they're not spending all the time in the office that they're quote unquote supposed to be spending. And so going back to the comment that you made, David, about butts and seats, is that really what you are trying to measure? Like, do you want people to spend their time in the workplace with their butts and seats? Like, is that what you're going for? That is the old industrial mindset. That is coming from a place where you needed to have workers on the line, essentially assembling cars in Henry Ford's time, which I greatly respect the invention of that, the operation that Henry Ford had, like the line of workers, but that's not really the modern industrial workplace. People are spending time working with their brains, not with their hands, and they can spend their time working at home and not simply in the office. So having that emphasis on butts and seats is what actually causes people to be perceived as distrusted. The employee is perceiving that the management is not trusting them to do their jobs if they demand that all the time is being spent in their actual office seat working. Because they can work from many places. And if you force someone to work from a single place in that sort of context, that, as Thomas was describing, that may not be their most comfortable place to work. So their productivity is going to be much lower if they're not working from a place that's comfortable for them to work. If they're working in a place that's draining, that's distracting, that's noisy, that's too hot or too cold, or whatever it might be, it doesn't have the right equipment that they prefer. So thinking about, hey, can I trust people to do their job? Can I measure their actual job performance? That is what people should be trusted to do. So having a perspective of here are the OKRs for each individual, objectives and key results, or KPIs, key performance indicators for each employee. Then is that employee hitting those? And then having an understanding that if they're hitting those, that's great. That's all that's important. Now, part of those KPIs might be collaboration with your team, which might very well involve, and I certainly encourage that, people coming to the office for the sake of collaboration, because there's definitely some types of collaboration that are best done in person. And so that can be part of your OKRs and KPIs, the quality of your team collaboration, the quality of your contribution to mentoring. Mentoring is much better done when it's in a structured format, when people can deliberately meet with each other. So that could be part of your KPIs. The things that are actually best done in the office can be part of the KPIs and OKRs for various companies. So not measuring someone's productivity by is their butt in their seat for a designated amount of time, but are they hitting their KPIs, no OKRs, and setting those up in such a way that you get the outcomes that you want? That should be the basis of trust, not just monitoring where they are at all times.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Thomas, anything you want to add in there?
It seems to me that companies confuse the workplace to fix productivity with a company culture that needs to be addressed. And it reminds me of my early days in the tech world. When I started my career, I was in a company that gave free access, internet access to all employees, laptop at home. We were the very first company to do that. And a lot of our customers back in the days were worried, oh, I'm not sure I want to give internet to all my employees. I don't want to know that I want them to bring a laptop back home with them. I'm concerned about productivity and sensitivity of information. And today, it's not even a question anymore. So like AI that I'm sure we're going to talk about, trying to avoid AI for security purposes or productivity purposes is the wrong conversation here. If you have the right company culture and the right processes in place, I think all those technologies serve a bigger purpose than pure productivity.
And just to add to what Thomas was saying about people working from home with their laptops, another problem with having return to office mandate is that people very clearly from surveys and from accounts are much less likely to spend time working from home if they are forced to go into the office. And so if you are a global company, if you're working not only within your own time zone, and if you have benefits from people working outside of the typical expected, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 time zones, and if you want them to be available, that is another problem for people if you're demanding that they come to the office.
All right, well, Thomas, you said the magic word and you've unlocked the next category. So yes, I would like to get your perspective, similar to how you're saying your company gave you free access to Wi-Fi, and that was kind of controversial or new. Let's talk about AI and access to AI and where it fits in. So where do you see AI kind of having the most immediate impact, especially in these kind of flexible work models?
I certainly see AI on two different aspects. The team member experience, the employee experience, can be dramatically upgraded through AI, where your experience is no longer to look for a workspace through filters and navigating a floor plan or trying to see where your colleague is, but by simply interacting with an AI agent or assistant that can actually look for that information for you or even anticipate the need for you to have access to that information. And I think we're seeing a lot of our assistants that we're designing and building that are really there to proactively help the team member plan for the best day to come in the office and the meetings they can have in person and which team member they can meet and what event they can attend. And all of that can be done for them. It's no longer automation. It's true assistance, which I think is game changer. And the other aspect to that is insights, understanding better what users are doing, how they're doing it, where they're going, why they're going into the office, what they're doing when they're in the office, how the building, how the workplace is reacting to people coming in on a Monday morning when you have maybe a peak time and how everything adjusts. And so I think having AI to help the team member and having AI to help HR facilities in operating their building in the best way is certainly the quick wins here. Of course, we could do a lot more. We're just at the beginning of AI, and there's a lot of additional use cases that we're already working on, but those two are the primary ones that our customers have started adopting.
Yeah, that's great. Dr. Gleb, I know AI is something that you're into and learning more about and writing about these days. So can you give me your perspective? Where does AI fit in to how we're managing our employees?
So one of the biggest changes that employers need to think about is that AI makes in-person presence much less important. Because previously, if you needed to get information from someone, there was a lot of benefit from going over and tapping on somebody's shoulder and asking them for that information. That's a quick way to do things, whereas you don't know if you have something like sending a Slack message or an email or a Teams message or meeting with them that way. There's some friction there and some challenges, especially I've seen for junior employees that there's a challenge approaching senior employees. Now, when you have AI available, AI can actually get a great deal of that information. 70, 80% of questions can be answered via AI. So if you have, let's say, if you're a Microsoft shop and you have Copilot that is integrated into all of your documents, then you can use Copilot to find answers to questions very, very quickly. And it's not only Copilot, like if, let's say you're using a combination of Dropbox and Slack, those also have AI integrated into them. And so you can search through company documents and past conversations and just have that information easily available. So that's kind of one big benefit from AI, where you don't need to spend nearly as much time in person, because the friction from actual quick communication that you get from in person is not there anymore. You don't have to worry about it. Another big benefit from AI, of course, is having recordings of meetings. So there's a benefit from having more virtual meetings, because AI can record meetings and can provide quick summaries, including notifying you of any tasks and next action steps for you to take. So there's a benefit to shifting more of your meetings to virtual meetings, or at least having AI record and communicate about those meetings. So your presence at meetings is less important. That again makes in-person meetings less important than they used to be, and places more value on virtual meetings, which can be recorded. So that's another thinking about the impact of AI on the workplace. That's kind of like another element. A third element that I've seen is that AI is making the impact of people who are working remotely, it's making their jobs less secure, to be frank. Because if you have a job that you can do fully remotely, then AI makes you more replaceable. And so thinking from the perspective of job security, I also advise clients I write about that for individuals. I mean, I work with businesses, but I also advise them to talk to their employees and say, look, models right now, AI is as smart as a college intern, like a college freshman who's working for you or something like that. That is the level of AI intelligence, and it's great. It does so many things. It's wonderful, and it's replacing plenty of jobs right now already. Amazon just announced that it's cutting something like 14,000 jobs because of additional investment, corporate jobs, because of additional investment into artificial intelligence. And so clearly it's already replacing jobs right now. In the future, AI will be much better than it is right now. It's as dumb as it will ever be, in other words. So thinking about job stability and what's going to happen in the future, coming into the office and having that in-person collaboration makes your job more secure from AI disruption. So that is kind of another angle for AI that I talk to my clients about and thinking about their workforce planning needs.
Interesting. Yeah, I can say the use case that you brought up as far as the meetings go is fantastic, right? Like having that virtual assistant in there and accepting them in. And I think we've gone from a little bit of that scariness of AI to embracing it and understanding where it can fit in and where it can augment and help us in all different aspects, like we were talking about, from getting around to actually doing your job. So I think it sounds like we should be starting to embrace it and understanding where it can take us, rather than being scared and being overwhelmed by AI. So I do want to bring up a slight different topic here. We've been talking a lot about employees coming into the office or a hybrid, both working at home or in the or at the actual workplace in the office. But we didn't really talk about frontline workers yet. So Thomas, I'd like to shift to focus on the frontline workers and kind of understand what are some of the biggest misconceptions you've seen about how the workplace technology should support frontline workers?
Yeah, it's a great question, and frontline workers are a large portion of the population within an organization. And Dr. Gleb hinted around this concept of second citizen of the modern workplace. They're often considered as second citizen of the modern workplace, which is crazy when you think that they're actually the front line of your organization. So we at Appspace, we always say we want to make sure everyone is a first citizen of the modern workplace. So whatever tools you have available, everyone should be able to access those tools, even if those are on personal devices. And for that, you need to log in. When you don't have a company email address, you should be able to log in one way or another into the tool that you need to do your job. The second thing is you need to reach out to frontline users where they are. And it's not always possible on a phone. Dr. Gleb mentioned Henry Ford's manufacturing process. You can't take a phone inside a manufacturing plant of Ford. So the phone is not always a tool that users have access to for critical communication, safety, and security. So I think having different ways to engage frontline workers is important, and that's why technology like digital signage kiosks are as important, if sometimes not more important, than mobile devices or desktops. I think that's important. Thinking that a frontline worker doesn't need a space to meet or have a meeting is also a wrong perception. I don't know many frontline workers that don't start their week with a team meeting. You see that in restaurants, you see that in stores. So being able to plan for that and have the right set of tools for that meeting to be productive is important. Understanding who's working on what day is also very useful for users. So there's so much value in frontline workers having access to a similar set of tools as desk workers, maybe with different range of permissions and feature set, but still those tools should be there and should be able to accommodate their needs depending on what they're trying to achieve.
Well said. Yeah, multiple channels for communication, and that omni-channel approach is something I think we've heard a lot about. So, Dr. Gleb, just interested in your take on the frontline workers and the technology and how we manage them and make sure that we're providing the right experience for them as well.
So for frontline workers, when I think about the question of flexibility, I think about the question of flexible hours rather than flexible location. Now, that doesn't mean that all frontline workers can't have some flexibility of location. So for example, when I work with healthcare organizations, something that they don't sufficiently think about is how much time their nurses and doctors spend on doing clinical paperwork. And filling out clinical paperwork does not have to be done from the office. Filling out or from the hospital or medical practice, that can be done from home. So we've actually worked with a number of healthcare organizations to shift their schedules from doctors and nurses from 5 days in the office to 4 days in the office, and giving them some time working from home to do a lot of the administrative paperwork that they would have to do anyway. So that's kind of one thing to think about, that just because they're frontline workers doesn't mean that 100% of their job requires them to be in the office at all times. That's one. Second, flexible hours is another big thing to think about. Well, flexibility is not only about location, but it's also about which time you work. So having the option for people to work, let's say, a 4-10 schedule instead of a 8-5 schedule, or even a 3-12 schedule, that is a big benefit that a lot of people appreciate. And having that be part of something that an organization can offer can really boost the organization's retention and the well-being of their employees, because that allows their staff flexibility and comfort. So having those sorts of things in mind from the perspective of flexibility and frontline employees, those are things that can make your company more flexible and a more desirable place to work when you're thinking about healthcare organizations or any others that require frontline employees, whether it's people who work in manufacturing or retail or whatnot. having that perspective is really important.
Yeah, I think back to the well-being that you brought up at the beginning of our webinar today, and the beginning of our discussion is focusing on that and the flexibility and how it attributes to the overall well-being of your employees. I think is an important factor that not always considered. So good point there for sure. We're down to probably about the last 10 minutes here in our call. So I do want to kind of just overall get each of your take on just the future of where we're going as we look towards, the next 5 years, right? It's 5 years since the pandemic, and we said that's a lot of things have changed. We're checking in now 5 years later. Look ahead 5 years to 2030. Just kind of give me an idea of some of the things that you're seeing and where do the technology that we'll be using. I'd love to start with you, Thomas, if we could, but what kind of things should we be doing to prepare for the future of work, and where do you see things going?
I mean, it's always hard to say where we'll be in 5 years from now when you see the speed at which technology and AI is evolving. But I think at Appspace we stopped saying hybrid workplace. It's no longer about working from home or working in the office. We're talking about a converged workplace, which is basically your journey starts in a space which includes resources and people, and it continues in a similar space, maybe in the office with people and resources. And the lines are blurring between the two. And I think that's really important. And if you start thinking that the workplace is no longer an office or a desk at home, but it's an experience for the user and a journey, then it changes a lot of the dynamics on, do we need 4 days a week? The other thing is AI is definitely there to transform completely the experience. I remember a few years ago, we were saying we're going to build our product to be mobile first. And I was forward thinking back in the days, mobile first. Today, it's AI first. The way you access AI across the different tools is never going to be the way we do it today. And it started to change. You're having conversation with ChatGPT and it's going back and forth, and you're no longer typing or I think this is, imagine the user journey where an employee wakes up in the morning and it's an immediate AI interaction where we're trying together with AI to define what's the best use of my day and where does it take place and with whom does it take place. I think that's going to happen extremely fast. We are working on AI first employee experience as we speak, and I think we're going to see very quickly in 2026 this become a new normal. And that's certainly exciting because it's going to remove a lot of the frictions. You're done scrolling and trying to find information or look for the right resource. That's all over. So that's what I would be able to say today. Further than that, I don't know.
Yeah. You don't have your crystal ball with you? That's all right. Dr. Gleb, what about you? What are your thoughts on the next 5 years? Where are things headed? What should we be doing to prepare ourselves?
I think the AI disruption is going to be the biggest thing. We're already seeing, as I mentioned a little bit earlier in the webinar, lots of tech companies are laying off employees because they are essentially replacing them with AI. And I'm working with a number of companies that are integrating AI. So, for example, I'm working with an insurance company that right now they have a process where they get documents from their insured for each claim. And they get, let's say, something like 10 documents per file. And all of them are uploaded as random documents, like miscellaneous. But there are something like 25 categories of documents. So ranging from fire and police reports to receipts and everything in between. And right now they're spending about 10 minutes, well, 1 minute per document, so 10 minutes for a file with 10 documents, looking at each, figuring out what it is, and then relabeling it correctly. And now we're introducing a tool that's essentially doing the relabeling for them. It's classifying the documents, so using an AI classifier tool. So they're going to be spending 10 minutes less per file with this tool. And so what does that mean? That means that each of them will be able to handle a lot more files. And that means that you'll need a lot less claim staff in the future. And so that's just the future. And that's just one small example from so many other examples of AI just not making many jobs that necessary, or enabling the same person to do a lot more of the previous tasks. Now, nobody likes going through the documents and automating them. That's a great thing to automate. And then claims adjusters can have more time for more higher level tasks. But again, that means that there will be less need for claims adjusters. There will be less claims adjusters working because there'll be less work. Same thing for I mentioned about remote work. The more remote a job is, the more it's replaceable by AI. So when you're thinking about, let's say, how much time people are spending on emails, AI is going to be doing a lot more of email automation, summarizing emails for you, drafting emails. You'll be spending a lot less time on emails. We talked about AI being present in meetings and taking notes and so on. We'll eventually have avatars that can be your representatives going to meetings and can make certain comments on your behalf at meetings. And so all of these virtual interactions, of course, talking about, let's say, spreadsheet analysis. Claude just today announced a new tool for finance spreadsheet analysis that will make it much less necessary to have financial analysts. And so that's just going to have a lot fewer jobs for financial analysts. So a lot of the work that has been done autonomously, independently, remotely, will be done by AI, and humans will spend more of their time doing work that's more collaborative, more dependent on in-person interactions and relationship building. So thinking about how to prepare for that 5-year period, I mean, more like 3-year period, when these changes are taking place, I think is going to be fundamentally important. And so that's kind of what my new book from Georgetown University Press is about, The Psychology of Generative AI Adoption. It will be out in fall 2026. How do you adopt generative AI, and how do you think about its adoption, and how do you prepare for this increasingly disrupted and AI-mediated future?
Wow, good. Lots to think about. What I'm getting there is that the future is a lot closer than we think it is. It sounds like. So the future is kind of now for sure. So good. Well, I appreciate both of you being here. We are in our last couple minutes, so just kind of want to recap a little bit what we talked about today. But we talked about the Rachel story. We talked about scattered and missed tools a little bit. We talked about what the data is showing us, and it's reflected in the behavior we're seeing in the office as well. We talked about kind of like AI really and beyond AI, and how that's going to hopefully create less friction, more flow in our work. But the shift is real, right? It's happening right now. And so there's a little bit more information about that. If you want to learn a little bit more on the workplace experience from Appspace and our perspective, you can scan the QR code there, and that's where you can get to our workplace experience hub. Dr. Gleb, you provided the URL as well that folks can go to as well. So tell us a little bit about that, and just tell us again about where they can find you, and a little bit more information about your upcoming book as well.
Sure. So it's going to be tinyurl.com/DAEEVENT, and folks can see it on the screen on the bottom left. But I will be happy to send folks a copy of my existing book on leading hybrid and remote teams, and a book I already have out called ChatGPT for Leaders and Content Creators. So that if you want those, again, my new book will be forthcoming in fall 2026. So you'll get an announcement about that. I'll be happy to send you more information about that. But you'll be getting 2 of my books if you want those. Go to tinyurl.com/DAEEVENT. And for more of my resources, go to my website called disasteravoidanceexperts.com to help you make the best decisions in the future of work and avoid disasters. Again, that's disasteravoidanceexperts.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you both for joining us today. Some really great information shared, and a lot of topics for us to think about. So again, thanks for everybody that joined us today, and reach out to us if you'd like any more information, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.